What's going on, everybody? My name's Dallas. This is VicFoodStories, the place where we talk about food and beverage in Victoria, British Columbia. And today we are talking beverages. We're going to be talking coffee because I'm here in Rock Bay at Mile Zero. I'm here with Brad. How you doing?
Hi, everybody.
Dude, Mile Zero, I got to tell you that there's been so many people that have told me when they tried your coffee, it's like now it's their favorite.
Amazing. It has been, very interesting kind of 3 years. And we've had a lot of phenomenal followers through markets, farmers markets, and then also just through wholesale and, being a bit of the newer kid on the block. People getting to try it and see it. And we've had an amazing amount of feedback.
There's definitely something about it because like Mike, for example, he would always go on about Drum Roaster and he loves Drum Roaster. But then for some reason you guys have something that's sort of for him. I think you guys now are his favorite. And I heard it from someone else the other day. Same thing. They tried your stuff and they don't normally like drip coffee.
Mm-hmm.
They tried yours and they're like, I actually really like this.
Yeah. We have a different style and approach to our coffee.
So I was going to ask, the first thing was, what makes Mile Zero different?
The biggest and number one thing is that we're air roasting versus drum roasting. So you see the air roasters behind me. They're Sona Fresco air roasters, very small batch, custom roasting because they're 2 pounds at a time. And they're a little bit more interactive, and the process itself, I find, is a little bit different because it's so small batch. They're in glass hoppers, so they aren't the beans aren't hitting hot metal very regularly, so there's not a heavy amount of caramelization through the contact of metal. The air is constantly keeping them fluid and moving, and we also lend a little bit more towards the medium dark and dark roasts, which, after doing farmers markets for the past 3.5 years, one of the things that I heard the most at farmers markets was, do you have something that's darker? Or do you have a coffee that's richer in flavor profile? Also, people would say, I'm not a fan of sour coffee. And usually when they say the word sour, they're talking about acidity. Medium to light roasts are going to have a higher level of acidity on the roasting scale. And then depending upon the type of bean, it can have natural acidity as well, which when you taste that on your palate, it can taste sour. So the whole idea behind Mile Zero Coffee is that we want people to be able to get what they like. The one thing that I will always say is that it's what you like. It's not what I like. And to me, that's the most important part.
How many different varieties do you guys have?
We're currently carrying about 12. We have Sumatra from Indonesia. We have Yirgacheffe from Ethiopia. We have Cuban coffee. We have Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. We have Peru, a Mexico as well, and then our decaf. I utilize and blend for our 3 major blends: the Breakwater blend, which is our medium roast, the Island Espresso blend, which is our full city roast or our medium dark, and then we also have our Victoria blend or Vic blend, which is our dark roast. And immediately upon going to farmers markets and selling coffee, that was part of what we got a lot of really good feedback. And those statements that you have heard and we were hearing was, oh, this is different than what I'm used to tasting, and has a lot of flavor profiles that aren't as bright, citrusy, sometimes acidic, or to some people's palates, sour. And the thing I will always reiterate to people is, and the fun part about having, small 2-pound air roasters, is that we can custom roast for people. If you know that you enjoy a Guatemalan bean and there's a certain way that I roast it, but you want to try it differently, come on in. All you got to do is buy 2 pounds of coffee. And in 15 to 20 minutes, we can sit there and custom roast.
That's so sick. And I got to say too, the prices of your stuff is like, it's amazing. It's very good value.
It is. We looked at the comp set in Victoria, and there is very specific smaller farm structured single origin beans out there that can range anywhere from upwards of $20 to $25 a pound, or sometimes 3/4 of a pound. And we looked at all of our beans, averaged our pricing structure out, and said, what can we do so that people can get really good coffee for a appropriate price point, and one that people feel comfortable paying for. Because I feel like there's kind of almost two ends of the spectrum. You can go to Costco and buy 5 pounds of Kirkland brand coffee for $30, and you're not getting the best quality coffee. But then you can turn around and go and get a very specific single origin coffee and pay large amounts of money for it. Again, depending upon your preference.
What's the most expensive coffee you've seen for like a pound?
I've had the civet coffee, which is the cat.
The cat poop?
Yeah, exactly. I have seen, when I lived in Boston, they call it black ivory, which is actually similar process, but done with elephants. And it can range upwards of $400 or $500 a pound.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's probably US.
Probably. Yeah.
Like US money.
Yeah.
Like 400 or 500. Yeah. So that's crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Coffee, it's an amazing commodity. It's the second highest rated commodity in the world behind oil.
Really?
Yeah. It's, something that is used and consumed all over the world in many different ways, styles, and approaches. And I think coffee also in the last 25 years, there's been more and more information about it. Coffee is now being approached very similarly as you would approach wine. And a lot of my background has always been wine and spirits, as how we first got introduced through Divine Distillery and Winery.
Yes.
So a lot of my background and my understanding of beverages and palate and tasting and all of those kind of things comes from that side. And, it's how my business partner and I, Derek and myself.
Shout out to Derek.
And of course, shout out to Derek. We want people to understand that, we'll roast all of our coffees in a specific way that we do it, and it's on the shelf. But, you can also come in and have fun and create something on your own, or try what we have. And then I always encourage people to keep a bag or keep the empty bag and make some notes on the back of it, because then you can come back and say, oh, hey, I tried the single origin El Salvador, and, I love the flavor of the bean, but maybe I wanted a darker roast, or I wanted more of a light roast. And we've seen that through farmers markets. We're at Moss Street Market and have been at Moss Street every Saturday for the last 3 years. We're also at the Esquimalt Farmers Market, and both of those settings are just absolutely incredible way to incubate your business and get the brand out there to people, be in front of people on a weekly basis.
So was Moss Street the start for you guys?
It was. A little kind of history behind Mile Zero.
Let's go back to the start, because one of the things I want to even go back before Mile Zero, and like for you and Derek, if what made you want to get into coffee?
Coffee is very interesting for myself. I, grew up with a dad that drank vast quantities of coffee, not very good coffee. It was Maxwell House or Folgers, and it was in a 5-pound tin in a freezer. But he would consume, 10 to 15 small cups of coffee a day. And for me, it just wasn't something I thought that I would ever really enjoy. And I didn't really enjoy the flavor profile as a younger person. And, I think I really didn't start drinking coffee until my early to mid 20s. And what ended up happening was I had stopped working in my career in hotels with Fairmont, and was living back in Ontario at the time. And one of my very good friends, Jennifer McKimmey, who had started Mile Zero Coffee Company at Niagara Grocery, which was over in James Bay on Niagara Street. She had turned this tiny little grocery store into the most incredible organic food hub. It was prior to everybody carrying organic food at any of the large grocery stores, and she was working directly with 10 to 15 local farmers and bringing in incredible vegetables with organic certification. And her partner at the time, Ken Winchester, had started Mile Zero Coffee Company at Niagara Grocery. And they had two of the roasters that you see behind us in the space there, and were supplying mostly James Bay. And it was very, specific to that area.
It's almost like you had to be a local to sort of know about it.
Very much so.
And those roasters there, are two of those actually the ones? Or just similar? Like they're not actually the ones, right?
The two original roasters from Niagara Grocery are the ones that we take to farmers markets and live roast.
Oh, yeah.
It's also the beautiful thing about these roasters is that you can attach them to a propane tank. The two that we have that we take to markets, and we can live roast at markets and at Moss Street in the summertime.
It looks so cool.
It is.
And especially like the colors like bright red.
Yes.
And it really pops. But then you got these beans going on, and it's sort of almost like popcorn in a way.
Very much so. It's a similar concept in the idea of forced air and keeping the beans moving, similar with a popcorn machine. And yes, having that experience at a farmer's market, the number of people that drink coffee and have only ever either seen it in bean form, ground form, or in a liquid form, and don't know, people would walk by and we'd be just starting a roast and they'd be like, that's what coffee looks like. And to me, that's such an amazing way to engage people. And, for me, whether it's in the cafe setting, whether it's at a farmer's market, any opportunity we have to engage someone and have them, learn something new in an environment that they feel comfortable and get to try something and see something happen. And that's the very cool thing is, in 15 to 20 minutes, you see a roast go from green beans all the way to the roasted finish. And at farmers markets, we would have a crowd of 5 or 10 people just hanging out around the roaster while we were selling coffee beans and coffee by the cup, and they'd be able to get a cup of coffee and watch a roast happen while they were enjoying their farmers market experience. And it's those little roasters that, at Niagara Grocery when it first started, was such a great way for people who were already attaching to the brand of Niagara Grocery, seeing Mile Zero, experiencing and watching the roasting of the coffee happen right in front of them at the store. So there was a great capture of a lot of people in that community. The word spread throughout Victoria as well. There was, more people that were coming to experience the coffee at Niagara Grocery. And Jen at the time would have been 2015, I believe, around there. She had contacted me because I was looking to move away from Ontario, and I had already lived here 2 or 3 different times. And she said, well, I know you're looking to move. Would you want to learn how to roast coffee? So I said, sure, and loaded up my car, moved back to Victoria, and spent about 3 or 4 months with both Ken and Jen, just learning all about things coffee. And I did a lot of self-education as well, just reading and understanding some of the chemical compositions of roasting coffee and the changes in the bean and
there's some science behind that.
100%. And you can go down the rabbit hole pretty deep because there's a lot of interesting components. And, I know coffee roasters that are scientists that understand it from a molecular level and really understand that side of it. And learning from both Ken and Jen, Ken's definitely more on the artistic side of it and very much sight, sound, smell, tastes, all of those aspects. And with the glass hoppers and the very interactive aspects of these 2-pound air roasters, it was just an incredible learning experience for me, and to be able to pick up a new skill and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're really hitting like all the senses almost with those things. Like all of them.
Yeah, you can see it, you can smell it, you can hear it. And then afterwards you get to taste it as well, and,
Yep.
or even just chewing on a bean afterwards. And to me, that tactile and sensory interaction is such a great way for people to learn about it, and for myself as well. And seeing, I can have 4 different beans in the 4 different roasters, and you can sit there and watch how they differentiate throughout the roasting pattern, whether the bean's a harder bean, smaller, larger, where it comes from, what terroir it's being grown in, whether it's valley grown in a more of a mountainous area, hilly region, that kind of component, and seeing how that bean reacts.
So they'll change color at a different speed?
Yes.
Oh.
Some will have go into second crack at a different time. Some will go into a first crack at a different time. So yeah, there's lots of very interesting components to be able to see on that process, and handling the fruit or the berry itself. Back to Niagara Grocery a little bit. I was working there and taking over the roasting of the coffee at Niagara Grocery, and Jen ended up having to close the store back in, would have been the early part of 2017. And at that point, Derek, who's been probably one of the longest standing friends I've had, we had met back in Lake Louise in the early 2000s, and had even lived together here in Victoria for a couple of years while he was working and going to school, and I was working for at the Fairmont Empress. And Derek had moved away to Fort St. John, and I had moved to Boston, and we'd always just stayed in touch throughout the years. And he had heard I was moving back, and he was also planning on moving back to Victoria from Fort St. John. And he had picked up the phone and gave me a call probably about 6 or 8 months before he was moving back. And he said, anything you want to do on like a side hustle of some kind, or, just a secondary project or hobby or something like that. And around that time, Jen had been unfortunately having to close Niagara Grocery, and her and I had been having conversations about Mile Zero, and I had been expressing interest in the purchase of just the coffee brand instead of, or not including Niagara Grocery, but just the coffee component. And I mentioned it to Derek when we were having this conversation. He said, well, he's like, you want to become coffee roasters? And is this something that you'd want to go in on and be partners on? And that kind of spearheaded and started the process. And he was moving back and had been back for 3 or 4 months. And then October of 2017, we acquired Mile Zero from Jen, and really focused on farmers markets initially, and wholesale. At the time, we were roasting out on Divine Distilleries property out on Old West Saanich Road. They were amazing, as I was working still full-time for them as well as their brand ambassador, and built an 8x10 shed out on their property. And they let us have our 3 roasters at the time up there. And so I was doing the roasting out on Divine's property.
That's incredible. So they were full on with supporting you in your venture.
100%.
I love it.
Yeah, it was an amazing partnership, and definitely feel so much part of that family as well. And we'll hopefully always continue to work for them in some way, shape, or form, because there's so many amazing things that happen out there as well. And they have been nothing but supportive of both Derek and I in the growth and support of getting Mile Zero to a point where growing and being able to be in the space that we're in now, and having brick and mortar and growing our brand.
So you're roasting out there.
Mm-hmm.
And how long were you doing that for? Because you got this location not super long ago, right?
Correct. We signed our lease here in on Bridge Street in Rock Bay back in November. And so we were 2.5 years out on Divine's property, which worked very well because I was working for them full time, and this was kind of the side hustle aspect. And then, Derek and I were usually doing at least 2, if not 3 farmers markets a week, as well as, trying to grow the wholesale side of it, and working with a lot of my relationships in the bars and restaurants here in Victoria to worked with them on both coffee and then also on the spirit side of things. And so we had been kind of knowing that our next growth step was to have a roastery first and foremost, or a place to roast outside of a 8x10 shed with no heat and
A little bit more comfortable.
a little bit more comfortable, because it was getting pretty cold out there sometimes in the wintertime. So we had started looking for space and had been for kind of the previous full year, and then had a couple of opportunities that popped up that maybe weren't the right ones, and then this space became available, and we ended up signing the lease in November. We were planning to be open for kind of March 1st or April 1st, and that was right.
April's definitely not going to be a go.
No, we were hustling very, very hard, and then COVID-19 became prominently positioned in Canada and the rest of the world as well, but was actually starting to have a foothold in the Pacific Northwest, and we started to see that happen in Seattle and Washington, right in, I think, around February or March, and then all of the stipulations started to happen. So we ended up having to really kind of slow down and take a look at how we were going to work this, because there's a lot of unknowns, as there was for everybody during that time, and during this time, I should say, because it's nowhere near over. But so we didn't actually end up opening our doors here until the last week of July. So
wow.
What was meant to take us 3 to 4 months to get open ended up taking us almost 9. There was definitely some blessings in disguise of, when to be spending money and getting everything ready and equipment and all that kind of thing. There was definitely some interesting conversations just about how we were going to navigate, considering we had just signed a lease and 90 days later a global pandemic hit. And, do you continue to push forward and make things happen, or do you have to rework and rethink your entire plan? So, Derek and I had lots and lots of very in-depth conversations just about what it looked like and how we were going to make that happen. And, we went into first wave and second wave situations through May, June, July, basically, or kind of April, May, June. And when second wave hit, we both looked at each other and said, okay, well, the rules and regulations and stipulations will allow us to still open and be in a safe environment that's conducive to, the engaging environment that we want.
There's a lot of space in here.
Yeah, it's definitely a blessing that, seeing this space versus some of the other ones that we had looked at previously. This really allows us, having the square footage that we have, for people to feel comfortable being able to come in here and, having 35 feet and have people be able to stand comfortably with the appropriate 6 feet between each other. And, even in the area where you wait to pick up the coffee, you have the same amount of space. We can still have some seating. We've only got about 12 seats, but of our possible 24 that we would normally have. But it's been amazing to see in this portion in Rock Bay and people coming to still be able to sit in and have a pastry or lunch and have a coffee and relax and enjoy, or come in and work with their laptops and that kind of thing. So we've seen some very good support from that side for sure.
So with the air roasters, what percentage of companies use an air roaster versus a drum?
Very few. We have a lot of comments, and a lot of the other local roasters have, popped by, and, our machines are quite a bit smaller than some of the drum roasters that you see out there. Some of the smaller drum roasters are 10 kilos or 25-pound roasters. So for us to be 2 pounds per roaster, we've got the bank of 4 that we have here, and then we have the 2 more that we take to markets. But it's they're typically test roasters for the bigger roasters, because these come in a 1 pound and a 2 pound style. And the larger roasters would have them as a test roaster, where they can kind of test their temperature curves and their roasting components, and only have to do it on 1 or 2 pounds of coffee at a time. And then they can turn around and, throw 100 pounds into a 100-pound drum roaster, or 25 pounds into a 25-pound drum roaster and have their settings set and kind of work with it from there. So I believe there's really only one other air roaster on Vancouver Island, which was Sirius Coffee.
Oh, wow.
If I remember correctly. And then, a lot of people will also air roast with some of the smaller air roasters at home. If you're a home roaster and you like to geek out about coffee at home and that kind of thing. So a very small percentage. I would say 95 to 98% of roasters are drum roasters.
Yeah, that's so wild then for you guys to be able to do it that way, because it is so different. You're like recalibrating sort of people's understanding of what coffee can be.
Yeah, in a different kind of approach and style. And again, looking at the comp set out there and seeing a lot of coffee be more medium to light roasts. And, I understand that approach to coffee can really showcase more of the terroir and more of the bean specific flavors versus roasting and only having roast flavors. But back to one of my very first statements is that it's a lot about what people want in their style of coffee. And that to me is very important. And to both Derek and I is understanding that creating a coffee that people enjoy and, helping them to understand why, because people will say, oh, I love a strong cup of coffee, but they're not sure what strength they enjoy. Do they enjoy a strong bean flavor? Do they enjoy a strong brew? Or do they enjoy a strong roast flavor? But again, that's up to their palate and their preference.
And have you been able to help people sort of work that out?
100%. To me, it's so important to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And as we've interacted, whether it's on vermouth or gin or whiskey, Derek and I will ask, kind of 2 or 3 specific questions just about what they like. And, do you prefer a nutty flavor? Do you prefer dark chocolates? Do you prefer milk chocolate flavor? Do you prefer citrusy, bright, floral, berry, fruit? You can kind of ask a couple of specific questions and be able to direct and find out what somebody's flavor profile is. I will always encourage people to be adventurous, and you don't know if you like it until you try it.
That's how I feel 100%. Because I know so many people that they like to go with what they know. And then my first thing is like, because I used to be like that 1,000,000%. Like I wouldn't venture out of anywhere. I'd go to 5 different restaurants and I had one item at each restaurant.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like when Steven at work, he reminded me that like to go to Thai food was like unheard of. Like he had to basically like force me almost with like a gun to my head just to be like, dude, we're going to eat this. And like I really didn't want to. And it's just to go to have pad Thai, right? Which is sort of the starter for everyone, I feel like. And now it's like the world's so much bigger when you're just open to stuff.
100%.
Because maybe you try something, you don't like it. That's cool. But now you know for the future. But then what if you do try it and it's the best thing you've ever had?
Exactly. And that's the thing. And if you don't like it, then c'est la vie. You don't have to try it again.
No.
And, I will always try to challenge people and say, okay, well, and even if it just means that I have a quarter pound of something, and if they're buying a pound of their favorite, and say, hey, here, take this and try it. Because you never know. And, a perfect example of that is we have a Honduras bean that's kind of a medium roast, medium plus in that wheelhouse for roasting structure. And I have a lot of dark roast drinkers that I've had them try the Honduras, and because it's valley grown bean, it's got some richer notes. It's a bit of a bigger bean as well. So it has a lot of really good depth and richness, which is what a dark roast drinker looks for, but they think they have to have a dark roast to get and achieve that flavor profile. And so, I'll have them try a different style of coffee, but at a different roast than what they're normally used to. And we always talked about roast for so long, where it was, I'm a dark roast drinker, I'm a medium roast drinker. And now people are able to start to talk about, I like a Central American bean. I like an African bean, because they've been able to now experience that and say, oh yeah, I had an Ethiopian bean from Discovery, or I've had an Ethiopian bean from Mile Zero or from Bows and Arrows, and each one of them might be roasted differently, but it's a specific bean flavor from that country, and it might have blueberry notes or fruit notes or tea floral qualities, and they're like, oh, that's my flavor profile, that's what I like. And then they can kind of nuance that component with which roast category they like as well. So that's where, again, that personal preference and style is so up to you, and being adventurous in that means that you can find something new.
That education, though, is a bit of work, I think. I imagine.
It is. And again, asking the right questions and just being open to the idea that, it is what my guests and what, Derek and I, when we're at the markets, asking those questions, what do people want and what direction?
I would imagine, though, that like if you're really into it and you sort of geek out on it and you like know a lot, to be able to help someone sort of navigate and find something they like even more, I mean, that would be pretty cool.
Oh, it's a very fulfilling process as well, because, and it also supports our mantra, helps then to support people with attaching to our brand and creating brand loyalty, that engaging component, asking those right questions, you're involving them in the process.
Actually, that's really interesting, because you're making custom roasts for people.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you like Mile Zero can almost be, it's like almost like the people's company, because what other company can you come to and like get your specific roast and bean or whatever? Like you could be making like a million different types technically, because everyone wants something different. So that's actually that's amazing how variable everything is.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is we do stick to kind of our main 3 blends, and then we've got our decaf, and then I've got the single origins that on our retail shelf are always going to be consistently roasted the same. But yes, when people want to have some freedom or try something new and be adventurous, the things that we talk about and encourage people to do. And a great example is 2 weeks ago, I had someone come in and they said, oh, my brother's a huge coffee fanatic. He absolutely loves it. He, tries different places, and, he's reading a lot about it and very involved in it. And she's like, oh, well, I think I might get him one of your hats and some coffee and stuff for his birthday. I said, well, do you, want to get him a gift certificate for the value of coming in and custom roasting 2 pounds of coffee? She's like, that would be amazing. So she gave it to him, and 2 days later for his birthday, he came in and hung out for half an hour, 45 minutes. We talked about, all the different beans. I showed him, what the differentiation between looking at all of these beans in green form looked like, smelled like.
He must have loved that.
He did. Yeah, he sat here and, we got to pulled him a shot of espresso and had him try some of our different drip coffee that we had on that day, because we always have at least one single origin and a couple of our blends on as well that are all kind of different roast sets as well. And then asked him, kind of 10 or 15 different questions just about what style and type and flavor profile that he was enjoying, about what he was trying and smelling and that kind of thing. And then, he chose to do a blend, and we ended up doing a Central American heavy blend because he liked more of those flavor profiles. And then, we just made some notes on the bag or on the 2 pounds, and he was able to then be able to take that home. And I said, well, now go home and make notes, after you've had a chance to try it, and, make it a couple different ways. Make it in a stovetop Bialetti, make it in a French press, make it in a drip machine, whatever you have at home. Try it in a couple different ways and see exactly what your favorite component was. Because then, if he wants to come back and do it again, we can either do exactly the same thing, or we can tweak something or add something or do something like that. So it's, So
it's not just when you roast it, but it's also at home, the way that you're preparing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of mitigating factors as to, how you can have your coffee taste.
Yeah.
Consistency is very, very important, right?
But if you do it like a French press style versus something else, that same coffee is going to taste different?
It definitely can, for sure, because of water exposure, how it's ground as well. It's like when you walk into a place that has pour overs and things like that, they're weighing out to an exact gram amount how much ground coffee is going into the filter, and then the water is heated to an exact temperature and then poured over in a certain specific amount of time, and there's an actual pour over kettle with a longer spout. And to make sure, again, consistency and component of how that's being made. But again, that's up to a person's preference. 100%.
For people that haven't been to a market and haven't seen or come in here and seen these things go, can you sort of describe what the process is like from start to finish?
Of course. The roasting process itself is really only about 8 to 10 minutes. So when we start the green beans, there's different settings, and what happens is the blower will basically kick in and start the beans moving. And the beans at the very beginning in green form are quite heavy, so they don't move around as much, and then they start to lose some moisture and some weight as they start to toast or roast. And in those, first in the first roasting component, or the roasting time, even in the first 45 seconds to a minute and a half, you'll see them change from green into a kind of a light cinnamon or light brown color. And then that will kind of continue to change through the stages of different kind of colors of at the brown spectrum, from cinnamon all the way up to milk chocolate, dark chocolate. You will also see during that first kind of 3 or 4 minutes, you'll start to kick into what is called first crack. And that's where those beans are starting to toast to the level where they start to crack open. They'll start to lose some of their pith, which is right in the center of the bean, and then the skin as well. And that starts to fall off and become the chaff, which is basically all of the skin and the pith that's released off of the bean during that process. So it goes through first crack, and that's where, seeing some of the different types of beans or blends and that kind of thing is that each one, can have a very active first crack, or it can be very slow, and depending upon which type of bean it is. And then as that roast continues along, probably into about the 6th or 7th minute, you'll start to hear it go into what is called second crack if you're getting into a darker roast. And that sounds more like crinkling paper, whereas that first crack sounds more like popping popcorn. It's more aggressive. It's quite a bit louder. And second crack is quite quick and has, it's like having crackling Christmas paper kind of styles or sound to it anyways.
And so once you hit that point, when you hear that second one, that's when it's going to go to dark?
Typically, again, every bean kind of is going to react a little bit differently. Yeah. Most of the time, if I'm into medium to light roasts, I won't take it into second crack at all.
So is it basically, do you just know the time limit per type of bean, or once you hear it a little bit, you just stop?
That's where the addition of the sight, the smell, the sound, all of that kind of combination of seeing that process, which is why having these glass hoppers in this style of air roasting is so, to me, the more of the artistry side of it, where you're looking at the how the beans are changing. I describe sometimes, if you do get into some of the darker roasts, it's kind of like describing the different levels of white paint, when you have like low gloss, matte, all the way up to super high gloss. And that's when you start to see oil production happening on beans. Whereas, if you take something really dark into a Nero or even darker, it will be producing oil in the actual roaster itself. Whereas, into a medium plus or a medium dark, it looks quite matte, and it still looks quite dry. So yeah, there's a lot of different nuanced parts to what it looks like and sounds like. And, you can definitely get into the more computerized versions of roasting, where everything is, everything is dialed in onto a computer, and you watch your heat curve on a graph, and, you type it in, put all your settings on, and then it'll just stop.
Very disconnected, very automated.
Some of them are. And
well, compared to what you're doing here.
In comparison to what we're doing here, very much so. So Yeah, I feel like it's part of what does set us apart and really does allow us to interact and engage with our clientele and all of our guests here. Is
Well, this
that
is an actual like experience
yeah,
where like you come, you don't just come and just get some coffee there. You come and you buy some. I mean, you can watch it being made
100%.
custom.
It's the thing is a lot of people as they're either waiting for a coffee or they're waiting in line and a roast is happening, the number of people that just kind of pop over and, pop out and take a picture or take a video and, get to experience what's happening right there in front of them. And to me, that's so important as part of that engaging environment and having people to be able to understand who we are and our brand and understand the coffee that they're, coming to truly love and enjoy.
Is there a premium for getting like a custom one made?
Not typically, depending upon the beans that you want and choose. It's more just about finding the time to do it, which again, is to me so important for having brand loyalty. Is that to take 25 or 30 minutes out of the day to create something special for someone is just as much fun it is for them as it is for me. And seeing that be an approach and a style and seeing how excited people get.
Yeah.
It's
I can imagine like
important.
they're probably super excited to come in and tell you that like their last visit, you did something for them. And they're probably super stoked to come in here and like excited to tell you that was amazing.
100%. It has, it really is what captures that brand loyalty and people having Mile Zero become their favorite coffee and go around and word of mouth, whether you're hearing it or we're hearing it, or they're putting something onto, social media and Instagram and coming to the farmer's market and saying, hey, I tried your coffee at, one of the places that we work with on a wholesale component. And they're like, oh, we, looked on your website and saw you were at Moss Street Market and, we wanted to come down to get some beans. And then they end up coming here as well and then get the full experience of seeing 4 of the roasters in action, not just one out in the farmer's market. And, for both Derek and I know that that's a very important part of who we are as entrepreneurs and the owners of Mile Zero is having those interactions and being able to create an experience that people attach to in a very positive way and love telling other people about as well.
Yeah, I guess when they sort of come in and they give their feedback and they get you to make something custom, they're now a part of that process. They're not just walking into a business and taking whatever you have off the shelf. So that like the brand loyalty thing, I think that if people feel like they're involved, that's taking it to a whole nother level.
100%. It's to me what really does not only create brand loyalty, but holds it and keeps it, because it does involve them. And you hear these stories all of the time. And if you go somewhere or you go to a party, the times that you hear someone tell a story about an experience, or they went to a brewery, or they went to a coffee shop, or they went to a dining experience in a restaurant, those interactive moments and those times that engage them is what truly sticks in their brain, because they're out talking about it and they're telling people. And that word of mouth is so important for growing a brand and having people experience it. And to engage someone on that level is fulfilling for me and for Derek, but it's also, I think fulfilling for them as they find something that they're going to continue to either spread the word about or, drink that coffee every single day versus someone else's.
And you just reminded me of like my top meals in my head that I've ever had. I'm going through it, and definitely part of it is the interaction with the restaurant where I've been. That has, I almost want to say, a huge factor in like let's say my top 3 dinners that I've ever had.
Always, whether it's
like the one in Japan where the place was closing down, and the owner, he sat with us, he talked us through some of the stuff. Then at the end, the owner came in and sat down beside us, beside Anton and I, and he's like, "This is the highest quality green tea you'll ever have." And he like poured us little cups, and he's like, "You have to try this." and we didn't ask for it. He just came over and he wanted to share with us. And that made a lasting impression on me, which, I mean, Japan, you're not supposed to tip. I believe it's actually rude, but I had to tip there because it was a next level experience. And I think they understood that it was like just so much appreciation.
Yeah.
But it was that interaction that really, the food was great and it was amazing, but that interaction really set it apart.
And you're creating a memory, right? There's unfortunately, there's too many situations in our world where we do things that don't create a memory. Unfortunately, some of those things are lackluster, and we just do it as a consumption component versus doing it for an engaging aspect. And whether it's fast food or, there's a lot of those aspects that are not engaging and they don't create a memory. And as soon as you create that memory, that sinks in for someone. And when you create that memory, then it adds to their nostalgia and they want to go back and they want to tell people about it. And as soon as you do that, then your brand is supporting that idea of growing your customer base and your brand loyalty and having people come back to you more and more and more because of that creation of a memory and creating a moment that to them now becomes a nostalgic interaction where they're like, I had the best time. And it's something that they don't, they talk about for a long time.
Yeah. If you can transcend and they get into that area of being like nostalgic or having those memories that stick, like that's, I mean, I don't know how you can do that on purpose, but to be able to do that is like incredible. Because there are I've never really pondered too much about what you're talking about, but it's 100% true.
Yeah. For me, it's always been, especially in the hospitality industry, I've worked in hotel settings and those kind of components for 20 plus years now.
Well, can I give an example?
Yeah.
Like the first time I think I met you was at one of the markets. I don't remember which one.
Probably Moss.
I think it was Moss. Might have been the first time I'd ever gone there actually. And you were doing the Divine Vermouth.
Yeah.
And you like, so with that Vermouth, the way you basically set it up is that you take 3 little sips and each one hits your palate in a different place. But the way you walk someone through it, and like the way you walked me through it, where like you're describing, okay, the first one's going to do this, but the way you like led me through that whole process was it set it up perfectly, but it also like added a whole bunch of enjoyment to it that if someone said, here, try this, it's going to do 3 different things, whatever. But you sort of like brought me and everyone else there along, and that made a big difference.
It's, it's something that I've always not only been trained on, but then also been part of creating. And I use the word engaging a lot because it's so important to engage someone, because you can just give people information. But if it's not in an engaging environment or coming from a point of passion as well, where if you're passionate about something and you engage someone in it, you instill in them, it could be a very low level passion, but they're learning something. So there's an educational aspect to it. You engage them in that environment. And if you're passionate about it, it's amazing how many people will turn around and then go, in 7 minutes, I just learned more about vermouth than I ever have.
Yeah.
And whether it was something, and people would be like, oh, well, maybe vermouth's not my jam, but I just got this experience. And they'll talk about the experience sometimes almost as much as they'll talk about the product. If they love the product, they'll talk about both. And they'll be like, oh, I have never had vermouth like this before in my life, or I've never had a cup of coffee that gave me all the things that I really want to and do love about coffee. But it's those kind of interactions where creating an engaging environment with a passionate amount of education and information, it really sinks into people and again creates that memory or that moment when they're like, oh, that just clicked. And you can see it in people's eyes where, especially at a farmer's market, when someone walks by and you're telling a story. And that's the thing is, it is storytelling.
I never buy alcohol at farmers markets, and I bought a bottle of vermouth that day.
Yeah.
So you did a good job.
Amazing.
But no, it is storytelling 100%. And it's the way you present it, because like you said, it could just be, here's a bunch of information, very non-engaging, which is maybe not going to be received.
Mhm.
or as soon as someone is into it and you involve them and make it fun, that's a totally different ballgame.
100%. Yeah, it's so important for just creating an environment where people feel comfortable and are willing to be adventurous. Back to
That's
the
the thing.
very first part of our conversation is that a lot of people can walk by and just say, nope, I have my go-to coffee. Nope, I have my go-to coffee. But if you create some kind of an environment or get them to try something or smell something.
How is somebody going to walk by one of those air roasters and not like sort of just
Exactly.
be engaged on some level?
Yeah, you could be a tea drinker, but you've never seen how coffee is roasted and what that looks like, and that can capture someone. And when Derek and I were talking about it, we're like, well, why don't we live roast at markets, right? And when we were talking to the executive directors of Esquire Malt Market and Farmers Market and Moss Street Market, and we were like, well, we'd love to bring one of our roasters, and they're like, you can bring a roaster to the market? And we're like, if you let us, we will. And being able to bring that experience and yeah, it is sitting right in the middle of the farmers market, all of a sudden people would be like, what is that smell?
Yeah.
Right. And people will be like, it smells like coffee, and it just kind of permeates the air, and people get to walk over and see it, and yeah, it immediately creates an engaging environment.
There was something about smell too, that when Natalie and I were here like 3 weeks ago,
Mhm.
you had made some fresh stuff, and I think we smelled that, but then you pulled a bunch out that was from like a couple days before,
Mhm.
and then that was like a totally different thing.
Yeah, when coffee blooms and goes from immediately out of the roaster, it hasn't had enough oxygen hitting it, so it hasn't had a chance to open up or ripen or bloom.
Okay.
And as it ages, and then it's also why if you get into medium light roasts, you want to let that sit for anywhere from 3 days to a week before you really get into it, because it needs time to age. And then there's this, I haven't delved into it as much, but there's a myriad of information on aging coffee.
I was going to say, so like what's the ideal time frame? I assume it depends on the bean.
It does, and the roast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like does coffee ever really go bad?
It'll flatten, and it can definitely lose its flavor profile. And
you can still drink it though, right?
Oh, you could still drink it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll still give you some caffeine, but it could taste pretty neutral.
It's not as optimal as it could be.
Which back in the day, they would just add more grounds to the brew and try and make it stronger, and it would make the brew stronger, but the flavor profile or the richness of it wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Because it's old. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of different components when it comes to that.
You're going to have to help me with this, but on my notes, I wrote down something and I don't know what the word is. Okay. So it said you guys only do one type of coffee.
Arabica.
Yeah, Arabica.
Yeah.
So what is that?
Well, there's Arabica and Robusta.
Those are the only two types of coffee?
They're strains of coffee. Yeah.
Okay.
So Arabica is what we typically see 90% of the time. Robusta typically comes out of kind of the...
I like that word.
Robusta?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very rich coffee. Like it's got a lot of that kind of depth, but it's not always the best quality coffee.
Is that why you chose to go with the other one?
Well, typically it's pretty much all you would see. Like I would say out of the 200 different varietals of coffee that we can get from our importers, I have maybe 12 to 15 of those that are organically certified. So our options are quite a bit less in comparison to conventional coffee. And then out of that, I think I've only seen maybe 2 types of Robusta. So it's like...
Have you ever tried them?
I have had a couple, and there are quite some of the larger roasters in the world that do mix Robusta and Arabica. You don't typically see that in North America very much. I've never delved into it too heavily, just because it's hard to get organically as well, so I wouldn't typically bring much of it in, other than to probably roast and try myself.
Yeah,
more than anything.
Just experiment.
Yeah, just to kind of see what kind of flavor profiles are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Arabica typically is what we would see 98% of the time.
So when you guys are looking for beans, like what is the criteria then?
It's fairly wide open as long as it's organically certified, or it's being practiced or grown organically. So communicating with our importers and talking to farms directly, so that we know that they're practicing organic practices.
And again, would that be a scenario where if they don't have the organic label, it's because they don't have the money or they don't want to spend the money just to get that? But that doesn't necessarily mean that the thing's any less. It could be higher quality.
Yeah, maybe. I've always, the biggest thing for me is I just don't want our beans to be sprayed with pesticides and other components. There are natural approaches, and again, from if you look at winemaking and again even food growing, having a label and a stamp on it as organic certification is driven a lot by the consumerism in North America, which is again, can be quite the rabbit hole to go down in regards to that. But when I first started working at Niagara Grocery, that was a big conversation, was that, a small local farm to get organic certification was going to cost them anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, which they didn't have that kind of money. They were practicing organic, but they needed to spend a large amount of money to get an organic sticker to go onto their packaging, or to be able to hold a piece of paper that stated that they were practicing organically. And yet, non-organic vegetables don't have to say what they're being sprayed with. Just has a sticker on it that says what type of vegetable it is, but it doesn't have, they're spraying it with some possible Roundup or other nasty things that can have quite a negative effect and be quite unhealthy for us when they don't have to tell us that. And yet we have to be told if it's organically certified or not. And for us, it was just a very important part to uphold. With Mile Zero back at Niagara Grocery initially, was that it was in an organic grocery store, and we were only going to serve organic coffee and roast organic coffee. And Derek and I have continued to uphold that standard of organic certification, or knowing that the farm is practicing organic standards. And it's always the interesting part is that some of these countries have been growing organically because there's no other way to grow except that way for hundreds of years. And it's only that someone in North America has made the statement that they have to have an organic certification for it to be sold in our country, which, it can be slightly counterproductive. And
100%. Have you visited any of the farms where the beans come from?
Not yet. We have been so busy that trying to take some time off, and being that there's only the two of us, hasn't really afforded us too much downtime.
Are you the only two employees?
Just the two of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I run...
This whole time?
Yeah.
Oh.
We've had a couple friends that have, come to help us out if we're trying to take a day off here or there. But no, we've definitely just kind of been putting our heads down for the last 3 years and been making it happen. Derek does farmers markets with myself, and he has a full-time job as well. But he works on a lot of the accounting, paperwork, and organizational aspects on the back end. And then I work at the cafe Monday to Saturday, 7 to 3 that we're open here, and then working with all of our wholesale clients as well and handling sales on that side, and then doing the roasting.
Yeah. So who all are you partnering with for stuff?
Great question. We work with a great selection of businesses in Victoria, both bars, restaurants, and some cafes as well. We work with Nourish Kitchen and Cafe over in James Bay, their sister restaurant, Charlotte and the Quail, out in Saanich.
Which I got to say, if you're listening to this and you haven't been to either of those, you have to go.
Definitely.
The way I would describe them is Nourish is like really clean food, like really, really good, but really clean. And then Charlotte and the Quail, at least the time I went, was like really clean.
Yeah.
Like even cleaner food.
Oh, yeah.
So, but they're both absolutely incredible. You have to go to them. Please go.
Yeah. They do everything in-house. It is a lot of vegan, gluten-free, very, very health component driven. They've got bone broth and kefir, and they make absolutely stunning food, and their settings are both incredibly beautiful as well.
100%. Every time I leave either of those, I feel great when I leave.
Oh, yeah.
I never feel bogged down. I don't feel like sugar crash. None of that. You leave feeling amazing.
Yeah. Haley and her teams make absolutely incredible food and great experiences as well. We also work with Bodega Bar and Tapa Bar down in Trounce Alley. So the two Spanish restaurants, they serve our coffee there, both espresso and drip. Espresso at Bodega, and then drip and espresso at Tapa Bar. We work with Il Covo over in James Bay as well.
I'm going to be doing an episode
restaurant
with them at some point.
Yeah, Charmaine and Idolo. They've been working with our Vic blend and our decaf.
Is that how you pronounce his name? Italo?
Italo.
Oh, I've been saying it wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I've been calling him Italo.
Yeah, I've always said Italo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And then we also supply coffee to the University Club of Victoria as well. They serve it in their banquet settings and then in their restaurant for their lounge area. We also work with the Mint for their brunch service. We also do a fair amount of cold brew for a lot of bars in town as well, whether it's for coffee-based cocktails, that kind of thing.
Are they doing that at Bodega?
Not the cold brew. They use our espresso and they make their own cold brew.
Okay.
On site.
Yep.
And then some bars and restaurants, we provide bottles of cold brew already pre-batched out for them, just so that it's easy for making cocktails with and that kind of thing. And then we also work with a good number of retailers around town as well. Smaller grocery stores, Aubergine over in Fernwood, the Birdcage store over in James Bay.
Do they actually is it at a bird store?
No, it's just the Birdcage Confectionery was what it was originally called. It's the oldest grocery store in Victoria, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was opened in 1907.
Shows what I know.
Has all the beautiful flowers out front, and then David and Vlasta Booth are the ones that own it, and they have Terrible Truffles is one of their businesses as well. So they have a beautiful selection of chocolates, and it's a small kind of grocery store in there as well.
I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, it's an amazing little shop. And so they retail our coffee there, so by the bag. And then we also work with the Farmgate store over on Main Island, Don and Shanti. Mile Zero is heavily consumed on Main Island. I think we probably keep all of them caffeinated on that.
How many people live on that island?
I want to say maybe 1,500. That's a bit of a guess.
Okay.
But I'm not sure exactly how many there are. I
lived in a town once that had 2,500 people in the population. And on the second day, I was already recognizing people.
Oh, yeah.
So I think living on an actual island with an even smaller population would be a wild experience.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've been staunch supporters for many, many years. So
awesome.
And then we supply coffee to all the pilot boats as well. So all the guys that bring in the big ships go out on the smaller boats and bring in the ships. They drink our coffee on all of the boats and in their offices as well.
You're fueling a lot of people.
We're trying. We're doing our best. Yeah, we definitely have hopefully some more opportunities coming up with some more cafes as well. And our online presence is quite great, especially through the pandemic. We're offering free delivery anywhere in the kind of greater Victoria area, or at least the greater downtown into a little bit into Vic West and Esquimalt, and then kind of as far up as UVic pretty much, which was a great way for us to be able to continue to get coffee into people's hands.
So
through
quarantine. Maybe with that, like with quarantine and COVID and all this, how has that sort of changed things for you guys versus like where you originally thought you were going to go into now where you are, sort of what you are doing?
We were blessed at the very beginning of COVID hitting is that we were deemed essential vendors at farmers markets. So farmers markets were allowed to continue, but it was only farmers for vegetables and other aspects on that side. And then we were informed that coffee was going to be deemed an essential service. We weren't allowed to sell coffee by the cup at farmers markets, but we were able to sell beans. So at the beginning of the kind of quarantine and people, having to stay at home or being able to go out, but it was, socially distanced, et cetera, et cetera. We saw our market sales go, probably 1.5 times what they were previously, because everybody was sitting at home and drinking a second pot of coffee, more so than they normally would. And,
Were you shocked by that?
A little bit, but at the same time, it was also fantastic because we also, our wholesale, all of those places we just kind of listed off, were overnight from 100% to 0%. So our wholesale, which was probably 60% of our business, went right to zero. And so having markets be a prominent component for us and through the beginning portion of it was amazing, to still be able to see all of our regulars and be able to get them coffee. And then, they were going from £1 to £2 a week, £2 a week kind of component, because they were at home quite a bit more than they had ever been before. And then we started to do, we kind of sat there and went, okay, well, let's think outside the box, because we need to figure a way to still get coffee into people's hands, generate revenue to be able to support trying to get the brick and mortar open as well. And so we said, all right, well, let's put a free delivery code up on the website. And, we did a bunch of social media push as well, just saying, hey, you get free home delivery, no contact delivery, whether it's ground coffee, bean form, whatever it is. And we just really started to push the website presence and the online presence to anybody that wanted and needed coffee at home during the quarantine and during the pandemic, which was amazing. It really allowed us to be able to continue working through a lot of that aspect and being able to generate the revenues and keep the wheels greased, I guess, as you would say it.
So you saw a large uptake in that?
Our online presence previous, because we were mostly at farmers markets and we had other retail components and that aspect, we saw, some online orders, but it was quite a significant increase in people that were like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you deliver it to our door, drop it in the mailbox, and, we had gloves on and masks on and everything was being sanitized. So, it was also a great way for us to expand our brand and have people that maybe not had tried our coffee before, or people that had tried our coffee before, be able to get it in a safe way, in a safe environment, and be able to still get the good bean juice for home.
The good bean juice.
Yeah.
So this location you have here, is there a significance sort of to the area, like being in Rock Bay?
We looked at a couple of different areas. The one thing about roasting coffee is that you do have to be in a commercial or industrial setting.
Okay.
Because of the smell. You can't do it in a residential area.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because it's a bylaw that's specified. So within Victoria and kind of Vic West Esquimalt, we have a couple of places that are commercial and industrially zoned. So you're a little bit more limited. We looked at a couple of them in different areas and had a couple of opportunities. And then when we walked into this space, seeing the 25-foot tall ceilings and all of the exposed wood, it's got that light industrial feel. So it kind of fit with the idea of being a roastery. But then we also had the great opportunity to say, okay, well, we also want to have a cafe with grab and go snacks and that kind of thing. So it really kind of caught our eye. And this area is just up and coming. It's got such an amazing amount of new businesses coming in. We've got Hoyne and Driftwood. We've got Parachute Ice Cream. We've got a lot of office buildings that I didn't really even know of that are up above a lot of the street level businesses. So we've seen some great foot traffic on that side. And
then Wheelies is just up the street there.
Wheelies is just up the street. We've also got Discovery Coffees, production office up there. We've got Bows and Arrows just down the street. Il Sauvage. We've got Moon Underwater. We've got Salt Chuck Pies. This area as a whole, I think, is the next up and coming area for businesses to be moving into. And then, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more residential that ends up happening in some of the other tertiary aspects, all the way down towards Jutland and down the Gorge Waterway. I think there's lots of amazing access and we're seeing more and more support coming this way. which has been incredible. So yeah, this area itself was there was new building owners in the area, and we had been talking with someone that knew them about another space, and then they reached out to us initially and just said, hey, the person that's in here has their lease coming up, and would you like to come and see the space? And they wanted to have because there was a cafe and a roastery in here previously, and they, as new building owners, wanted to continue with a coffee shop and roastery in the same space. So it was a great opportunity for us to be able to have landlords that wanted our style of
that makes a big
business
difference
as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been very great on that side.
That's one thing I was wondering too, because the previous business here, as you mentioned, like it was a cafe. So coming in as the same type of business as one that is then leaving, what's a thought process? Is there any like thought of, well, they didn't make it, and they're doing the same kind of thing, kind of not that they are or were, but you know what I mean? Like how do you sort of weigh that out?
I think just gathering information. Derek and I had some multiple conversations about what that looked like, and the one thing that we also talked to the person that was in here before a little bit as well.
Good.
And he fulfilled his 5-year lease, which is a positive. It's not like he was pull and shoot on an early lease because the business wasn't doing well. He maintained it, he survived. His style and model is quite a bit different than ours was. He was doing full pour overs and all of that kind of style, and Derek and I went around and looked at what our demographic is here and what our competition is as well, and seeing what was there and what they were putting forth, and what our opportunities are and what was happening here beforehand was quite a bit different. We love to showcase a lot of our local partnerships where he was making all of his food in-house. And that can always be a struggle, the time, the energy, the effort, all of the things that go into making a lot of the things in-house. Whereas we work with Mosi Bakery for all of our pastries and lunch sandwiches and breakfast sandwiches. We work with Salt Spring Island Sprouts for their for their sprout wraps. We work with Singing Bowl Granola.
Shout out to Jessica.
Always. Jessica Duncan's.
Yeah, her kitchen's right over there too.
It is.
She's an area here.
She's doing amazing things out of that space. So we've got her energy bites and energy bars. We're working with the boys from House Sausage. They've made some custom pepperoni sticks for us. We're looking into carrying Adriana's burritos as well. We work with Hot and Cold Cafe from over in Cook Street with Chelsea and her team. She brings us soups every week.
I love their cookies so much. The chocolate mint cookie.
Yeah, it's so good.
I can't get over that thing.
Yeah, it's we work with Cold Comfort. Autumn and her team bring us ice cream sandwiches and have made custom ice cream sandwiches for us. We work with our neighbors, Parachute Ice Cream.
Yeah, just a couple doors down.
Yeah, we do affogatos. We actually are creating an affogato bar where you have 5 or 6 different types of Parachute ice cream that you can use with our affogatos. So we have Mayan chocolate, we have cinnamon vanilla, we've got a couple of vegan options, vegan vanilla and vegan dark chocolate, and then we have the traditional vanilla bean as well. So it's a big component for us to really showcase a lot of the opportunities in this city, and having all of these amazing other entrepreneurs that make amazing products that we get to showcase along with ours. And I think that model is also very important because it allows us to really focus on not only showcasing the partnerships, but it allows us to focus on the roasting and the coffee and that kind of thing. And yeah, to me, it's creating a balance between having amazing products that people come back for every day, and also spreading the name of different brands out there as well.
That's really important. As people succeed, to help others that you work with or know or whatever, and help them, because they'll come up as well from it. 100%. I feel like. So it's like for example, Israel with Maize.
Yes.
and the tortillas. He's been doing a lot with Halt Whistle cheese.
Yes.
And so now with everything that he's been getting with his tortillas, now he's Halt Whistle sort of been used so much with it that I was talking with her and she said that like they've had a big boost, I think, because of what he's doing. And it's just sort of that like hand in hand type of thing.
Very much so. I think that, and we're so blessed in Victoria and on Vancouver Island. We have a lot of like-minded people. We have a lot of savvy entrepreneurs and people that are making incredibly high-quality products. And, along with showcasing that partnership, you bring a lot of their brand loyalty and those people. And when you have those kind of partnerships, people may have not tried our coffee, but they go, oh, well, you've got Parachute ice cream. I'm waiting in line at Parachute ice cream for ice cream from them, but I want a coffee as well. Well, why don't I pop in and try a coffee and, try the ice cream as well. Or, we carry Salt Spring Holland kombucha. And they've got an amazing following and people pop in for those. And, I think that kind of...
This is how I feel sort of about this podcast, because I've met so many people through doing the radio and TV over the past 4 years that it's like, I know all these people and I need, like, this needs to be shared.
Yeah.
Who are you? Like, who's Brad?
Yeah.
And like, let's just share that because maybe somebody doesn't know who you are, but here's an opportunity.
Yeah. It's a brand brotherhood. You know, there is this incredible brotherhood of amazing local brands in Victoria and Vancouver Island that support each other. And, as soon as we started opening here, Derek and I looked at each other and we're like, yeah, Salt Spring Island Sprout Wraps, Singing Bowl Granola, House Sausage, Salt Spring Island Kombucha, all of these people that we are side by side with at market stalls every Saturday for over 3 years. And we would eat Sprout Wraps and we'd have a bottle of kombucha and we'd go down and see the boys from House Sausage and be picking up, roasts and steaks and bacon and all the stuff for cooking at home. And
have you tried their tarts?
Yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah, those things are deadly.
They are.
So good.
So yeah, I think that to kind of full circle it back to the idea of what type of cafe we have here and roastery as well, that is welcoming, but also, we will bring you incredibly good quality products from brands that you already either support or will come to support by showcasing that partnership and that brotherhood of local brands where we have those people that make incredible things, and why not showcase what they're doing as well?
That's actually really cool. Of like, important. If these are all items that you've been consuming on a weekly basis, and now you can bring them all into the place where you're working, and it's like you've sort of somehow managed to, like, because if you just named like 8 different businesses or something that are over there, and like now these have all in one spot, like this central hub. That's really cool. Yeah,
it is, and they're our biggest supporters, and we love being their biggest supporters as well, and it's why there's so much growth and so much opportunity for everybody to, as I guess the saying of all being boats on the same rising tide.
Yep.
There's nothing but great opportunities to showcase everybody as a whole in this city. And, especially when tourism opens back up, the opportunity for a tourist to walk into a place and say, oh, well, what's this? I tried the best kombucha and then I got a pastry from Mosi Bakery at Mile Zero Cafe and I tried a pepperoni stick and a energy bar and, whatever the things that they buy, but, they get to sit there and all of a sudden try 3 or 4 different new brands in one place. And then, if that generates new business for our fellow entrepreneurs, I think it's nothing but supportive and nothing but amazing.
100%. And when I like you listing as all those companies, like in my head, I think that like that's somebody's livelihood. Like that's a person. That's what they do. And so you just named like several people basically. Always. And I love it. You did mention Parachute.
Yeah.
And the affogato. So what is that? What's the affogato bar going to be?
So basically we'll be offering them an affogato menu.
Yeah.
So we'll have, options for people, and whether there's something seasonal, and what kind of flavor profiles will also go well with the espresso. So we have, I think, 5 different types right now, and people will be able to come in and have a double shot espresso with a couple scoops of parachute ice cream. And I've always loved affogatos, like an afternoon treat. And I always think, you usually just get vanilla ice cream with it.
Yep.
And I'm always willing to be adventurous and try different flavor profiles. Some flavor profiles, maybe not as much with coffee as others, but I think there's been nothing but great opportunities to try and say, okay, well, hey, you're our neighbors, and we want to be able to not only showcase your product, but pair it with our product as well, and be able to have people enjoy an experience and something that's just really tasty.
That affogato that I had when we were in here was incredible.
Oh, their ice cream quality is bar none, and when you put it with our espresso, it's a phenomenal flavor profile.
I would really like to try like a candy cane ice cream
Like a
in an
Christmas one.
affogato.
Yeah. Well, and that's the fun thing,
I
right?
think that would be great.
As they do start to do seasonal ones as well, there could be even more of an opportunity to, if we see seasonal fruit, and if there's a coffee that has some of that flavor profile in it, to be able to kind of combine the two of them and, be able to pull an espresso that's got natural blueberry flavors.
When they do the blackberry crumble, I love the blackberry crumble ice cream.
Yeah, which would be really cool with a Jägerscheffe espresso shot that has, similar flavor profile. So yeah, there's an endless amount of fun things that you can do with that. And that's part of being that adventurous component and creating an environment where people get to try something new. And,
do you think you could ever get like an exclusive flavor of ice cream here that you can't get over there?
I don't know. I'm sure we could always talk to Robin and her crew and see if they'd be willing to do something fun on that side. We do partner with Cold Comfort for her ice cream sandwiches, and she did make an amazing kind of co-branded ice cream sandwich. It's like a vanilla latte espresso ice cream that she used our espresso for, and then made custom sandwiches with our Mile Zero espresso, and did a gluten-free vegan version, and then did a full-fat tasty version as well.
Ooh.
So yeah, we've got both of those here available there, and she's got some at her
Is
shop.
that a limited time thing, or is that just ongoing?
I think it just depends on how well it sells, and if it's something that people keep asking for, then she'll continue to make more of it. And at least, I'm sure she will always be willing to make more for us here at the shop. So,
what do you guys have coming up for? Do you have any plans for things on the horizon?
We do. Right now, we're kind of just working on figuring out what the current global pandemic is doing, and then with second wave already upon us, exactly what that's going to mean, and how we can kind of work on that. So we are going to be looking at probably working on getting some new packaging happening soon as well, which will include just kind of upgrading our branding in different components to be able to approach more of the retail components and maybe some medium-sized grocery stores.
Okay.
In that kind of style.
I love the branding that you have, like these shirts. Like that's when I was here last time, I bought a shirt.
Yeah.
And it's like one of my favorite shirts.
Yeah.
I just love the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me sort of like an old school baseball.
Exactly. And that was
deal.
Exactly what we were going for. Derek worked very closely with one of our branding people, and spearheaded both that kind of old school baseball swiped logo, and then we've got our circular larger logo that has the Vancouver Island imprint on it, and then we've got our bag logo as well. So kind of we want to make sure that we're tying in all of our branding components.
And is the bag the square one?
Yeah, and that's part of, we want to make sure that we're looking at biocompostable bags and that kind of aspect. So that'll be one of our biggest steps now that we've been able to get the cafe and roastery open. So we're starting to push on those sides as well. And looking at just expanding our wholesale side of our business as well, and also expanding our offerings here. And, we're excited to have Adriana's burritos and things like that come in. And, always talking to new partnerships and local components and other cafes to see if they're looking for coffee provider and that kind of aspect. So, I think expansion on our wholesale side, and then also just creating this cafe to be even more vibrant and more fun. And yeah, just expanding that side of it to create accessibility and even more engaging environment.
As the past few months have gone on, have you noticed there's been more people like coming in?
Very much so. We've had such an amazing support from all the local businesses in the area where we're in, but then we've also had such a great amount of support from our market regulars, and then, new people popping by, just even all of the people that are in the businesses in this area. A lot of them were new to us. And now, they're buying the coffee as their favorite coffee. And, they've come in and they're like, oh, this is great kombucha. This is, these sandwiches are amazing. Or the number of people that have walked in and be like, oh, you have Mosi pastries? That's amazing. They're like, we used to make a trip out to Mosi once every couple of weeks to go get pastries. And now they're coming in every day.
Because they're out in Sydney, right?
They're out in Saanich.
In Saanich, okay.
Yeah. On West Saanich Road.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I feel like seeing more growth just from being in the area that we're in, and a lot of the new people that have popped in to be able to experience having the cafe in their work area or where they are, has shown some incredible growth for us on that side. And then, just, having a cafe and a storefront, and having a brick and mortar, because, it's always the tough part of incubating a business, whether through farmers markets and growing wholesale, is that not having a storefront for people to go to 6 days a week, whether it was online orders or sending them to one of our other great partnerships at Aubergine or For Good Measure or a birdcage store, was always great and awesome to support those partnerships as well. But it's been so amazing to be able to have our own space where no matter what, 6 days a week, people can come between 7 and 3, and whether it's grab a coffee, grab beans, say hi, sit and have lunch. It's been an amazing couple of months to be able to have that available.
Do you have, or you must, I guess, do you have a favorite coffee? Like here, like a certain bean done a certain way?
I would probably say a couple of my favorites right now. I've always enjoyed Yirgacheffe. The Ethiopian bean.
Okay.
It's one of my favorites. It's got an incredible richness to it, but a really cool, almost tea floral fruit like note or berry like finish. And I love it, whether it's drip or pulled on espresso, or I'll drink it at home in my Bialetti. And I would also say we just brought in an organic Guatemala that I've been playing around with some test roasts, and it's pretty spectacular. We also just got back, but we've been waiting almost 8 months for it. But it was on a boat when the pandemic hit, and it's Cuban Serrano, and it's almost like peanut butter in coffee form. It's incredible. Really? It is so nutty, and it's got I actually mix half Cuban and half of our Island Espresso, because our Island Espresso has a lot of rich milk chocolate notes.
Okay.
So you get this like peanut butter and chocolate kind of flavor profile.
Do you have that made up right now?
I don't.
Okay.
We literally just got the Cuban beans in yesterday.
Oh, are they in the bag there?
Yeah, they're in one of those big bags. So we were very excited when we got our note from our importer that he's like, Cuban's finally back. So we picked up I've got 2 bags of that. And I did one test roast today. So I'm going to be doing a couple more tomorrow, and it'll be on the shelf and available by tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many different countries do you get beans from? I mean, is it always varying? Do you obviously must have ones that you're consistent with? Yeah,
we definitely have consistent bean availability. We will see some seasonality to some of it as well. Like we just got the Guatemala and the El Salvador, which I hadn't seen in probably 4 or 5 months. But we will, we work out of Indonesia, Africa, and then Central America, kind of the coffee belt, which is pretty much 20 degrees north and south of the equator, where pretty much all coffee grows. And so we bring in, if we see something, interesting and fun, we'll definitely snag a bag in that kind of aspect. So we do have the freedom with our importer that we're not having to buy a shipping container of one type of coffee. We get to mix and match and bring in different bags. So we have lots of really great freedom on that side to bring in some fun and exciting aspects. So yeah, I think we've got 12 different beans right now.
Well, the one you were talking about there, that one sounded really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to come back and get a bag of that stuff.
Definitely.
Through owning the business and like your time with Divine and all that stuff, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned sort of dealing with different beverages or coffee or food or anything?
I would, I think going back to the idea that it's personal preference. You like what you like because that's your palate. And, it doesn't matter what type of beverage I've served or made or created, whether that's coffee or, working with Divine, a lot of the spirits and cocktails and that kind of thing, is that everybody's palate is different. And it's always, I've used the term nostalgic palate a lot because I think that it's very, very important that, your memory is stimulating what you like. If you have a good memory about it, you're going to want something on that flavor profile. If you have a bad memory about it, you probably say you don't like it. And it's like if we both walked in and you didn't like cinnamon and I like cinnamon and we walked into a place and it smelled like cinnamon, you're probably not going to have the best experience, where I will.
I had the wildest thing the other night at dinner where this one drink smelled like motor oil. Or it tasted like motor oil.
Oh, like the texture of it?
Yeah. Like just straight up. But it took me back to being in my dad's garage, like when I was helping him do oil changes when I'm 10 years old. It's like the way the garage smelled is exactly what that drink tasted like. And it was the wildest thing.
Yeah.
Like it instantly flashed me back and it was the wildest experience.
And that's where, again, creating an engaging experience for someone is stimulating a memory, whether you're creating a memory or you're stimulating an older one. And that to me is so important with things that you eat and you drink, because those senses are all stimulating memory, right? You walk into a place and you smell something and that stimulates a memory of some kind, good, bad, or ugly, sometimes, depending, but that can set you on the path of what that experience is going to be for you. And I think always in my experience is that if you can create an engaging environment that stimulates a nostalgic memory or palate and your flavor profiles, when people walk in and smell coffee and they smell the roasting and they smell the brewing and, all the different aspects, that creates that environment and then it engages them. And then from there you can, have all of the fun with asking the right questions and providing them with a product and a cup of coffee that's going to knock their socks off and they're going to want to come back for more.
Yeah, nostalgia is that's a powerful currency to be dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Really powerful, because you are instantly just sort of almost breaking the ice.
Exactly.
Like there's some familiarity already established. So let's just move past that and start to like really get to know who
and people become comfortable.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And if anybody ever walks into a place that makes them feel uncomfortable, they're not going to want to go back, right? If somebody's not making eye contact and saying hello when they walk in the door, and or asking them how their experience is and checking in and touching a table and seeing what, is there anything more that they need, and the basic aspects of engaging hospitality.
Yeah.
Creates a comfortable environment, which then puts people at ease and they want to come back for more. And then when you also provide them with a product that they really, really love and, provide them with a cup of coffee that they have a first taste of and go, oh, that is really good, they're going to come back.
I normally end with that lesson question, but I'm wondering, are cocktails ever going to be a thing here? It would actually make total sense now that I was thinking about it. I'm like, how does that not happen?
Derek and I have definitely talked about whether or not a liquor license is going to be something that we'll look at. And I think in the future, it'll be a conversation that we'll continue to have. I think that...
because I think there'll be some real originality going on if that was the case.
100%. I think that there's nothing but more opportunities here in this space. I think in the current setting of the global pandemic, we need to really work on exactly what direction that might take and what that would look like. But, being such a, medium to large size space, but lots of opportunity and lots of ability to do things.
You could host some really cool events in here.
100, like it's incredible how, I had Scott Gurney from 17 Black pop in to say hi and have a coffee. And right off the bat, he kind of looked at me and he's like, huh. I was like, yep.
The wheels
There's
are turning.
definitely some options, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's movie nights in here or karaoke and putting stuff up on the walls and, being able to have some fun and exciting things on that side, or have an event company be able to come in and, have different options for smaller gatherings, medium-sized gatherings. But as COVID shakes out and we get to have a better sense of what we're safely able to do, I think there's nothing but endless opportunities in this space that, Derek and I are both very excited about seeing what we can do in here and really creating a hotspot for things to happen.
Yeah, you literally just had like 15 things fly through my head of like possibilities for in here.
Yeah.
I think the future's very bright for you guys.
We hope so. And we're very excited to keep pushing and coming up with those fun and exciting things for people to be able to enjoy.
And so if people are looking to get more information about Mile Zero, where should they go?
So you can go onto milezerocoffee.com on our website. Has a full information of kind of who we are, how we started, and what we offer in regards to product. More than welcome to give us a call here on Bridge Street or pop down and see us. We're open Monday to Saturday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. With full service lunch items and grab and go snacks as well. And then, of course, incredibly good coffee. And
that's an understatement.
Yeah, thank you. And then you can see Derek at Moss Street Markets on Saturdays. He's there from 10 until 1 during the winter hours over off of Thurlow Street.
Does that go inside?
It's moving half inside, half outside.
Okay.
But yeah, Derek will be there on Saturdays from 10 to 1. And other than that, you'll be able to also have our coffee at any of those local places that we talked about that we're partnering with and showcasing, because we love people supporting both us and them at the same time.
Everybody just get your ass in the place down here on Bridge Street.
Yeah, come on down.
Just get in here and just come see Brad, and you'll have a really good time. Trust me.
Awesome.
And if you're looking for what I'm doing, you can go to VicFoodGuys.ca. That has all of the episodes of VicFoodStories up there. And you can check out VicFoodGuys on Instagram, which is where I put up all sort of my daily stuff. But between those two, that's everything I'm doing. And I will be back next Tuesday with somebody else. I don't know who yet.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time, Dallas. We appreciate it. And
dude, thank you so
for
much.
Everything you do for the industry and spreading the good word.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers.